Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis. They're at it once again. This time they're arguing and fighting about the legalization of weed in the state of Florida. Tyrone Bowman live, and this is what I'm going to be talking about this morning. So let's just get right down to it. According to Politico, Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis are fighting once again, this time over Florida's ballot initiative seeking to legalize marijuana use for adults in their shared home state. Trump running his third campaign for the White House in as many cycles officially came out in support of the measure last week. So Trump is in support of legalizing weed for recreational purposes down in Florida. But he's not for standing up for those who have been convicted of crimes and they paid their debt to society to get their voting rights restored. Because legalizing weed is revenue. It's an economic boost. They won't call them weed stores, of course. They'll call them something like organic farms and places, etc., etc. But it's tantamount to weed. When I was growing up, if you had marijuana or weed or something like that, they would lock you up almost for life. Now, because it's legalized, just like prohibition against liquor was the big thing. But when the government found out that they could just tax it and make more money off of it, then the states went into the liquor and whiskey business, the same way states now are going into the weed business. So Trump running his third campaign for the White House in as many cycles officially came out in support of the measure last week. That's even as his vanished presidential primary foe has invested significantly political capital to defeat Amendment 3. DeSantis calls it a ploy by the state's $2 billion medical marijuana industry to create a monopoly and says that its broad terms would allow people to carry dozens of pre-rolled joints and smoke them in public with no consequence. Duh! That's the purpose for legalizing it. What you don't want it legalized, but you want it legalized as long as you can control where people can smoke it. So what is the big issue down in Florida? Why does Trump want it legalized and DeSantis doesn't? That's kind of ironic to me. Much like during the presidential primary, where most of the congressional delegation backed Trump and state legislators went for the governor. Save for a few prominent defectors, the state's two most prominent Republican politicians are again forcing Republicans to pick sides. Although the governor's concerns largely mirror most state Republicans' long-established opposition to pot, DeSantis recently began chasing Republican lawmakers or chastising Republican lawmakers for not doing more to fight the measure in a separate initiative seeking to expand abortion rights. I'll get to that in a minute. That's what Woodstock was about. If you go back in time and you study Woodstock, Woodstock was about free love and weed and everything else, or pot as they called it back then. And today they call it weed, they call it medical marijuana. I don't touch none of this stuff. I'm just reporting the facts. So get it straight. This is Trump. So you say you're all about these issues, and then when it's time to do something about it, you're nowhere to be found. DeSantis said during a recent discussion at a Tallahassee church, that is what courageous leadership is all about. I paid DeSantis no mind. So far, most state Republicans have either stayed quiet on the issue or opposed legalization. And the state Republican Party has officially come out against the measure, vowing to fight it. State Senator Joe Gruters, an ally of the former president, said he is the only Republican state lawmaker who supports the measure publicly. And behind closed doors, to tell it the way it is, half of them are smoking this stuff anyway. But before cameras, they got to act like they're so pure about the thing. In actuality, they're not. But former state Senator Jeff Brandeis, a St. Petersburg Republican who backed legalization in the legislature before he was term limited out, said he believes that at least half of Republican lawmakers support Amendment 3 privately, even though they publicly oppose it. See what I just said? This bears witness to what I just said. Privately, they support it because half of them are doing it or their children are doing it. But publicly, they take a stance against it because it's called political expediency. They want to appease the conservative constituency. They want to appease the wealthy donors. But they don't care about the everyday people who will vote in the upcoming election for what they want, despite what the party chair wants. He said bills he authored on legalization that died in committee had many Republicans in the House and Senate privately signaling support, but none of them were willing to break ranks with DeSantis or the Republican legislative leadership at the time or now. This is just evidence that the legislature is completely impotent when it comes to taking this thing on and doing this legislatively. Brandeis said they're unwilling to do the hard work because they don't want the smell of the devil's lettuce on them. So that's what they call it, the devil's lettuce. Amendment 3 would legalize pot for people aged 21 and older if it earns at least 60% of the vote. The campaign supporting the measure believes it will need about half of that support to come from Republican voters. History shows that it's possible for a pot-related initiative to surpass the 60% threshold, although the state's makeup of registered voters has changed. Florida voters legalized medical marijuana with 71% of the vote in 2016. But that was also when there were 400,000 more Democratic voters on the rolls than Republicans. This year, the GOP has 1 million more registered voters than Democrats. Amendment 3 would be a boom for the state's medical marijuana industry, or cannabis, marijuana, pot, weed, whatever they want to call it. The largest of its kind in the nation, by allowing Florida's 25 state licensed pot communities to expand into the recreational market. The measure is backed by the Smart and Safe Committee, which has collected more than $94 million in cash contributions, mostly from Trulieve, which is the state's largest medical pot company with roughly 150 retail outlets nationwide. Told you it's about money. All that this is about one thing, money. And for Trump, it's about getting enough votes to win the state of Florida. When asked about Republican support for Amendment 3, Smart and Safe spokesperson Morgan Hill pointed to a June Fox News poll showing that 57% of Republicans support the measure. Floridians agree that it's time to stop arresting adults for simple marijuana possession, and that Floridians deserve access to be safe, lab-tested products, Hill wrote in an email. A spokesperson for Trump's campaign pointed to his post on Truth Social in support of the amendment and declined to comment on DeSantis' opposition. What kind of coward thing is that? Either y'all will have a debate about it or not. A spokesperson for the governor did not respond to a request for comment. Beyond Trump voicing his support for the amendment, he has not been particularly involved in the campaign to get it passed. The same cannot be said for DeSantis' opposition efforts. He has traveled the state railing against the amendment, and his political operation is deeply intertwined with efforts to defeat the amendment. Both of Florida's top incoming legislative leaders, House Speaker-designate Daniel Perez and Senate President-designate Ben Britton, are against Amendment 3. In a statement, Alberton wrote, the state's medical marijuana law already provides access for patients who need it. I am seriously concerned about the harm Amendment 3 will bring to our state and our future generations, Alberton wrote. Legalizing recreational use will accelerate our behavioral health crisis, pose harm to our children at critical stages of development, and increase impaired driving on our roads. They're already doing it. Whether you legalize it or not, trust me, they're already doing it. And outside of Gruters, who remains close with Trump, few current Republican office holders appear willing to buck the governor or their chamber leaders. But Gruters appeared in a Smart and Safe campaign ad with a Democratic state senator, where he emphasized both his support for Trump and Amendment 3. It's not about politics, it's about Florida, he says in the ad. It's about politics and it's about money. But the split in the party has been more pronounced in the grassroots. Just last week, the Smart and Safe Committee announced an endorsement made by the Florida Young Republicans. The Florida Young Republicans hereby stand with President Trump on his positions regarding the Florida ballot measures, the group said of the endorsement. But the Young Republicans' endorsement was quickly followed by a separate statement released by a Tallahassee-based chapter of the organization, announcing its opposition to the measure. The statement is signed by more than 30 members from across the state. Many members of the Capitol Young Republicans chapter work for state agencies and bureaus overseen by the governor's office. So y'all got to agree with the governor. He signs your paycheck or you get fired. We are committed to ensuring that Floridians see Amendment 3 for what it truly is, and we urge all voters to reject it in the coming election, the chapter statement read. And the split can get even more personal. The 2017 law the lawmakers wrote to implement the medical marijuana initiative was sponsored by the now former state Senator Rob Bradley, who is a Republican. Bradley said he supports Amendment 3, although his wife, current state Senator Jennifer Bradley, who is also a Republican, opposes it. Yeah, whatever. Double talk all the way around. Political posturing, double talk, cronyism is at hand. Everybody's hand's going to be in the pot to get paid. Till next time, never surrender, never quit. Thank you for watching.